Hey, Michael Church, Crawl Space Ninja. I'm here with Dusty Jameson of Inspector Clouseau. He's been a home inspector for 17 years. Today, we're going to talk about the negative effects of an HVAC system or a heating and air system on your crawl space. Stay tuned. So if you're new to Crawl Space Ninja, we talk about basement waterproofing, crawl space encapsulation, and even heating and air systems. So we hope you'll subscribe to our channel, ring that notifications bell, and also follow us on Facebook. All right, Dusty, so one of the things when I first started Crawl Space Ninja was I would go into a home and just be blown away by the condensation on the duct system of these heating and air units. So share with us a little bit. You've obviously seen a lot more of that than I have. Share with us why that happens and what homeowners can do to correct that.
Yeah, broadly speaking, if we can put our HVAC systems and our ductwork, if we could get those all enclosed inside of the building envelope, things will perform better.
Right.
But there's not space. And that's really the ultimate thing, is that those systems are large. The ductwork, we want to put those in areas that we don't use as much. We want to conserve space. So a lot of times that ends up in a crawl space or in an attic. So when we drop that HVAC system or its ductwork into an unvented crawl space, you are priming that environment to have condensation.
That's right.
Your outside air during the summertime in Tennessee, the outside air is going to be hot, it's going to be humid, your dew point is going to skyrocket, 70 degrees at sometimes. That means anything within that crawl space that's 70 degrees or colder will condensate. Right. So air ducts will be about 50, 55 degrees on the surface of that insulation, so they sweat.
That's right. Even if the air ducts are properly sealed, which the statistics I've seen says they typically are not.
Right.
It can leak up to 25% of the air. But even if they are, you've still got an HVAC system down there that is cold to the touch.
Yep.
The metal is cold.
Yes.
So it'll condensate. And even the, it's not Freon anymore, but whatever they call Freon now, those Freon lines, if they're not properly insulated, they'll also be cold to the touch and can condensate. Is that correct?
Even water pipes.
Yeah, even the water pipes.
We see even the water pipes. Copper piping, usually I see that in like June or July. I'll get into a crawl space and immediately you'll see water dripping off. And initially you think it's a plumbing leak,
right,
but it's not. It's actually condensation on those water pipes.
That's right. So one of the things that we also see quite a bit is if you've got an older home, that they swapped out the HVAC unit. They went from a 1982 Sears whatever to a 22 SEER unit. And this guy, he just runs cold, gets your house as cold as it can so that it can kick off so that it saves energy. That's the whole point of it doing it. But they're putting it into the old HVAC ductwork that probably still has R6 insulation on it or whatever, right? So then you've got just moisture exploding. Are you seeing that too, where these new systems are actually making the crawl spaces wetter?
Yeah, especially with packaged units, where it's a combo unit with the furnace and then the condenser. Everything is all in one package and it sits directly outside of the crawl space. If you go into the crawl space and get right at that air duct, right where it's blowing straight in, you're going to have intense cold air pushing through those ducts. And that's generally, you can actually look up, and if the crawl space is this wide, you can see the middle section where that main trunk goes down. Most of the moldiness is in the middle section where it's more cold.
Right, and I know that we've gotten a few questions. Well, if I increase the R value of the duct insulation, will that stop condensation? And I don't know that it would.
I think you could probably reduce it on the ductwork,
right?
But the crawl space temperature and relative humidity, you're fighting a losing battle, because with a vented crawl space, the air coming in is going to have a 70-degree dew point a lot of times.
Right.
Anything at 70 degrees or below will condensate. And when you get into a crawl space, if you go in the middle of summer, you know this, you're going to see that crawl space is about 65 degrees. It's going to condensate.
That's right. Well, and even if you could add enough R value to the ductwork, I mean, who knows what that could be? It could have to be R21 or something. And I mean, then you're talking about basically not being able to move inside the crawl space because you got so much insulation. One of the things that I do want to discuss is we're really harping on ventilated crawl spaces, but the way Crawl Space Ninja encapsulates is we also ventilate. And I do want to touch on that. It's not that ventilation shouldn't be done to the crawl space. It just should not be done to try to control humidity.
Yes.
Because it doesn't work, especially in the South. Now, if you live in Colorado or something where it's dry outside, then you probably get away with it. But you know, in the more humid areas, you want to encapsulate with ventilation.
Correct. The main thing with that, we do want to create negative pressure in that crawl space, but we don't want the makeup air for that ventilation to come from the outside.
Right.
The old school method of crawl space mold control would be to put vent fans in, and you have multiple fans, and some are blowing in, some are blowing out. When you make up the air from the outside, you're introducing more of that hot, humid, high dew point air or low dew point air into the crawl space, which is going to cause that condensation.
Right.
So if we do the ventilation, you would like to see maybe one vent blowing out, everything else is sealed off, and so you'd actually would create a negative flow from the inside of the house down and out. And the thought process is there, we don't want crawl space air, we're trying to not let that migrate straight to the house. We would rather that be exhausted out.
Right, and it is pretty impossible to completely air seal a crawl space. So even if you do get some outside air, maybe through a door, for example, or where the sill plate meets the block.
Yeah.
You know, that's what the dehumidifier is for.
Correct.
It is there to control the humidity. But like Dusty was talking about, if you could pull or draw that air down from the living space, that's conditioned air.
Yeah.
And normally it's dry because the HVAC system has dried that air out. So we just want to make sure that we're addressing soil gases. And soil gases could be methane. It could also be radon. So if you're in a high radon environment, you may want to do a submembrane radon mitigation system versus just a vent fan blowing out.
Yeah, absolutely, because you create that negative pressure, you actually get all of that effect, and it happens underneath the vapor barrier, which means you don't have to touch anything and you don't create much effect with the inside of the house.
That's right, and you mentioned that you read a study that was done in Pennsylvania by, was it the EPA?
Yeah. Where
they were talking about how radon mitigation systems can also help control humidity in basements, and I can only assume that it would also apply to a crawl space.
Exact same thing for the crawl space. Their study involved basements, but the same concept applies. We create negative pressure below the membrane.
Right.
Any moisture below the membrane would be pulled out of the house prior to going into the crawl space. So we actually make our dehumidifier work less because we address the moisture submembrane.
And that is assuming that the membrane was installed correctly, because you have to overlap and seal. The EPA does require a polyurethane sealant between the levels of the vapor barrier, and then we would also put our vapor seam tape on top of that to try to create as best of a seal as possible, so that all of the air is coming from under the plastic versus drawing air from above the plastic.
Right.
But if you can make your dehumidifier run less, I mean, they use about as much energy as a refrigerator.
Yeah.
If you can make your refrigerator run less, it will save you money.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we really appreciate you coming in and talking about this stuff, Dusty. And we've done several videos with Dusty, and we'll put a link to all those down below. And we hope you make it a happy and blessed day. And also check out his YouTube channel. He's releasing a couple of videos a month at least, right?
Yeah.
So I want you to check him out. I'll put a link to his channel down below. Michael Church, Crawl Space Ninja. Hope you make it a happy and blessed day, and we'll see you later.